October 2nd of 2017.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, I will go ahead and entertain a vote. So all those that vote yes, please say aye.
Aye.
No, please say no. The minutes. Moving on, what I've been excited about is a presentation from John coming in team for the Green Park development. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to
Thank
you and your team.
Well, Andy's turn.
Good evening. I'm Andy Baroker with Faegre Baker Daniels to talk about the Green Park MOU. With me is John Cunningham, who's Senior Vice President for Development, Strategic Capital Partners. With us as well as Andrew Morris, who's a First Vice President with CBRE, who's currently the listing broker for Veris, who's the seller. And will also be assisting us in leasing it once we get the development of the project underway. So our client, Lord Realty, entered into a purchase agreement for this property on August 31st, 2017 to buy this property, make sure it's right side up, from Veris Partners, about 169 acres off Whitestown Parkway and west of I-65. So that's sort of the area to give you some orientation about what we're talking about. The purpose tonight is to go over the MOU background, again, to develop this in with over 2 million square feet of land on 169 acres. We'll take TIF abatement and tax abatement and TIF funding to accomplish that with infrastructure on basically agricultural land that'll be required for anybody that acquires or wants to develop that. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, the development requiring certain incentives, and then some increment estimates that John will share with you about the base assessment of that property today and over the course of our client's development over 20 years, how much that would accrue in property taxes with those improvements on the ground over that period of time and how sizable it is. And I understand that you received a draft MOU today. We've been working on that with Town Manager Dax Norton and with Steve Unger, your counsel, as to terms of that. And when I get that moving forward, it's be an essential part of having an agreement to agree from that MOU in order to close on the property. But understand that you've just now seen it, and so happy to answer questions. And in the course of actions to consider that for approval at December's meeting, that's great. But we can go over it, and please ask questions and make sure that we're providing you what you need to do that. So I'll turn it over to John to talk about sort of the master development idea and plan for this project. John?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for getting us on the agenda, and we're really happy to sit down with you and walk through our project with you, and we're excited about the prospect of doing the project. It's a site that we've had on our radar screen for a long time. And so let me first give you a 2-minute background on Strategic Capital Partners, and Andy had mentioned Lord Realty, who's a partner of ours on other projects, and so we are forming a joint venture to develop this project. And Strategic Capital Partners is about a 12-year-old company based in Indianapolis, and we're primarily an office and industrial developer and owner. We acquire existing assets. We also develop ground-up new construction. We do that here in the Indianapolis area. We do it in Cincinnati. We're active in Raleigh, North Carolina, in Charlotte as well, and in Nashville. So we're really Midwest and Southeast based. And we're a company that, for our size, those are the markets we want to continue to be in. And doing office and industrial development primarily is what we will continue to focus on. We do some student housing and mixed-use projects. Did some student housing at UIndy, downtown Indy. But as I said, primarily our focus is on the industrial and office. And really our focus, we think, with our niche in the industrial side really fits well with what works well in this site. And Andrew will attest to that and speak a little bit about the market and kind of how this fits into the central Indiana industrial market as well. From our first conversation with Dax months ago about what our thoughts were on this project was to really come in and try to provide some diversity of product to what's here in Whitestown already at Anson and other industrial parks in the Whitestown and Lebanon area on I-65. And what we're trying to do, and it's really consistent with what our plan has been in Plainfield, where we've developed 6 buildings in Plainfield right near the airport at Stafford Road and Ronald Reagan, is to build buildings that are anywhere between 100,000 feet up to about 400,000 feet. And so we think, which will complement what's going on, what continues to go up at Anson and other places where you see buildings that are 6, 7, 800,000 feet and above, going to 1 million square feet. We feel as if we'll continue to see companies that are in northwest side of Indianapolis that are growing out of their existing space. They want to stay in the same labor area, come up I-65, and many times these smaller tenants, smaller buildings, you'll find tenants that have perhaps a little higher percentage of office space rather than the 1 million square footer that may only have 2,000 or 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet of office. So we think there's an opportunity to maybe have even higher office percentage, maybe even companies that want to come in and own their own property. So anyway, that's really our goal. We're hoping to be under development as soon as next year, hopefully second or third quarter of next year. So we're moving pretty quickly on our end. Again, we're really happy to be here and answer any questions. I'll let maybe Andrew speak to the kind of how this project might and what our plan is, how it fits in maybe to the industrial landscape today, and then we can talk through details on the site plan as well.
Yeah, some of my comments echo what John shared, but just to give you an idea, actually, if you recall, this site originally had, in pre-Great Recession, 3 or 4 very large buildings laid out on it, and basically similar to what has pretty much been built to date, with the exception of a few buildings. Then once the market came back, Veris Partners in MetLife, who we have a really good relationship with at CBRE, interviewed our team and 3 or 4 other teams, and everybody approached it from the standpoint of a vision that tied still to that large footprint, except for myself and my business partner, Jeremy Woods, who ran Prologis in Park 100 for a long time. I came out of the Trammell Crow background, which was all in Park 100 development. And our immediate reaction was, wow, this can be, I kept calling it Park 100 North or Park 100 Annex, where you have such an amazing community up here for talent, great place to live, and you're putting in place all the right community infrastructure, great schools, and so all that's a great mix for pulling those companies as they're growing, as they're outgrowing. Properties are becoming more and more functionally challenged. You can only do so many things with column spacing and others. So we were the ones that came to Veris in the spring of 2015 and said, we think you need to rethink this and think and focus on smaller buildings to attract smaller users that are in that area or that are the next Weaver Popcorn that's doing something small over Noblesville up in Marion County or up in Marion, Indiana, wants to consolidate into this area because no one else was offering that. And they hired us, and obviously it took a lot to go through some processes with the drainage and whatnot. But we arrived at a plan that we took to the marketplace that's quite similar to this, and knowing Jeff Lord as well as we do, and Strategic Capital as well as we do, they were the ones that immediately also said, hey, we're already doing some of this in Cincinnati. They've been very successful down by the airport if you drove some of their properties. They're the only ones that immediately went spec on multiple buildings that were, this building in particular, which is a rear load 168,000 square feet, no one had really built a spec building and had success at that size for the most part down by the airport like Strategic Capital. So they've tweaked it a little bit as far as the, but it's pretty much the same concept, which is to, as John said, offer a diversified type of product that will probably drive more office administrative employees than warehouse employees as far as the overall mix. Should drive higher rents too, which translates into higher building values, which translates into higher tax base. And all those things will help drive also your retail, commercial. So we really, really like it and are very, very bullish on it. And you've already seen some successes with Stephen Gould, who recently moved up into one of Becknell's developments. They came out of Park 100, got a lot of research, administrative jobs in there. Even Regio Fix doing their little build-to-suit. But that was tough for them. I talked to them about, it's kind of hard to find a location, but they worked hard to make it happen. And now with this, though, we really think we'll be able to accelerate that. And I don't know, John, if you want to talk about the project that we're...
Sure. You're involved in it.
No case study is better. You just have a broker and a developer. anybody tell you conceptually, but we're representing a company called LifeNet right now. It's okay to tell everybody because they don't mind. They are one of the leaders in human tissue donation and then sending out to hospitals. So, they're taking people's, if you're a donor and your tissue is donated, they take it and obviously create the right setup where it can then get to the hospitals and save lives or change people's lives. They've got facilities around the United States. They want to build one either here or in Dallas. We're competing with Dallas right now. And I bring it up because it's a wonderful 75,000 square foot build-to-suit, heavy on the office, on clean room that will be in there. Of the 75 jobs that will be there, a large percentage are folks that are, require high level of education, high level of pay. And interestingly enough, we released the RFP to 3 sites in the Whitestown area. And the only one that chose to pursue it, because one was quote unquote, we're just too busy with, and they're working on some big box deals, which is fine, it's fine. And the other one was, this is too office-y and high finish for us. We just want to build boxes with a little less percentage. And so they both passed, except for Strategic Capital. And even Vera said, we'll backstop them, just in case. So both of them got the RFP, but the shot to get that project here with LifeNet exists with this project. And it'll be a complete game changer. Beautiful building. Mostly, it's basically a distribution business from the operator standpoint, but it'll look almost medical office orientation to it as far as the architectural finish. And I just want to emphasize that it's these folks and this site that are driving the opportunity to be pursued here, whereas other folks are just wanting to stay on their bread and butter distribution boxes. So we're excited about it, and I'm a big believer in what you guys are doing here. I've been in this market for 21 years. I'm a 6th generation Hoosier. My family's from Frankfurt originally, and then some of them moved to Indianapolis and turned us into Indianapolis folks. But my dad was in economic development, my uncle's in economic development, so I do real estate, but I totally appreciate where you guys are coming from when you're looking at this and gals, and think this is a great project for your area. We're excited about it, if you can't tell. Yeah.
We're certainly excited about it too, so appreciate you all coming
Sure.
in and talk a little bit more about it. So, John, when you talk about that diversity of project, when I see about 8 buildings here too, are majority of them going to be on the heavy office side, or is it going to be a nice, comfortable mix between the distribution industrial and then office?
Well, I'd say
Or just kind of what the market
they'll
tells
be
you?
built speculatively, probably, and build-to-suit. So
Yeah.
on the spec buildings, we don't know yet what the office mix is going to be. But from a size standpoint, our intent is probably to start at the north end and move our way south. And so, and you'll see a connection that would go in with the project of Green Park Drive connecting Indianapolis Road down to 650 to Whitestown Parkway. And so our intent would be to start on and LifeNet that Andrew mentioned, the site that we are proposing to LifeNet is at the far north end, what you see is Building 1. So we can make some adjustments to this site plan, make it work for them, but our plan is to go from north to south. If we don't do that project, our plan would be to go speculative, would do the first 2 buildings, buildings 1 and 2 at the same time. What that allows us to do, and with Building 1 at 160,000 feet, is we can put tenants in that building as maybe as small as 30 or 40,000 square feet. So you've got, really our intent is, we have a range of tenants from, call it 30 or 40,000 feet up to 700,000 feet on this plan. Building 3 is larger than the 1 to 400 that I mentioned. It also could become 2 buildings. So we'll kind of see what the market's like a few years from now once that project goes. But conceivably, you could build a smaller building and build expansion there, or you could build 2 separate buildings. So we'll see. But that's an opportunity to still capture those large tenants. And then and then working our way to the south, you've got really 2 buildings that are what we'll call cross-dock, flow-through buildings where you have docks on both sides. You have 4 industrial buildings that are rear load, as Andrew said, that a lot of times will capture that higher office percentage. And then there are 2 buildings at the far south end, which are really office or commercial or some quasi retail type use. We're not sure exactly what those are yet, but we think that it'll make sense to develop those once Whitestown Parkway is upgraded with the plans that are on the table. And they'll also provide nice amenities to what's becoming obviously a growing amenity base along 334 and 65. So it's a long answer to a short question, but we typically have seen with buildings that are this size, rather than the 700,000 and 800,000 footers, that you see a higher office percentage. We'll just have to see what that is.
It's exciting. One, I'm excited for the thought of spec, where you hear about inventory being lower than ever too, and whenever we submit for projects too, it's hard to find that existing building out there too, but in a wide variety of scope, where you get the huge big bulk, but you kind of miss out on the buildings that are 150,000 and less too, so it kind of gives you a little different variety of the types of businesses and the booming you see in the town of White Center, Frederick, or to the area too, so that's exciting to hear. Anyone have any questions for the guys while we have them here?
You took all mine.
Do you have an idea for the average price per square foot that you're looking for rent?
On the lease rate? I think they'll range, for a building at the smaller end, so 160,000 foot building, those tenants, you're going to see rents that are going to be probably mid-4s to mid-5s a square foot, whereas you see the larger distribution centers, a 700,000 foot deal would be probably closer to $3.50 to $4 a square foot range, and then the other buildings somewhere in between that. But no, we're seeing construction pricing is skyrocketed, as everyone knows, and so for new development, you have to get higher rents just to make it work. So we're seeing with demand and the vacancy being so low and the absorption high on the space in the marketplace, people are having to and willing to pay those higher rents if they need to get into more space or new space. So, we're planning on phasing the project, as I mentioned, with the initial buildings 1 and 2, and then being able to, we kind of look at it as a 3-phase type project if you're able to do 2 buildings at a time and work your way to the south on the industrial side, and then be able to put in the commercial retail office buildings whenever the demand would come for those.
Is it currently zoned I-2?
Yes.
Is it?
Yes,
For
it
some
is.
reason,
Except for
that was-
the,
maybe it's-
the retail overlay is not zoned for industrial, but the balance. Yeah, Veris took it through everything.
You do commitments and all that.
There's
Yeah,
there's a portion of the south, Brian, that was
It's like R2.
zoned retail, commercial, so
Yeah.
it'd be a buffer between GCI and then the industrial.
Okay.
We think it's just the southern 200 feet.
It is, it's
right?
200,
Yeah.
200 feet buffer.
But the rest is I-1.
Anyone?
I can mention that we're working through our analysis on the tax revenue, the increment created as a result of the project, really the kind of the evolution of this plan. And when I think Veris started doing some site planning, the total master plan square footage was a little over 1.8 million feet. It grew to 1.9, I think, and with Veris as recently as last spring, early summer. This plan represents, just on the industrial, a little over 2,049,000 feet. So we've been able to add another, call it 140,000 feet from the most recent Veris plan. So that would bring the tax increment up along with it over a 20-year period. Veris had estimated in the neighborhood of $27.7 million tax increment created for the 20-year period for that master plan. And our estimate would be about $960,000 higher than that with that additional square footage. So,
Does that include abatement, John?
pardon?
Does that include abatement?
It does. It does. Yeah. And so that would bring us in the neighborhood of about $28.7 million. So we'll verify all of that, but that's our take, basically, and kind of using the same assumptions that Veris did on their analysis.
Would you be willing to share some of that additional analysis as you're working through it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Sure.
So we've worked, you want to talk about the MOU at all? Steve?
I think Dax has it on the agenda after the presentation.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure.
Cool. Seeing no questions, happy to move on to item 5, which is unfinished business, and talk about first about considering an MOU/EDA with Green Park. So, Dax or Steve, would you like to talk through anything specific about it?
Yeah, Brian, I'll start. This has been a great conversation with these partners, months in the making. We believe it's a great addition to Whitestown. The reason for the MOU is there's some timing. Currently, the county EDA covers this area. There's one final payment that they have on a bond. And once they make that payment on February 1st, which is when they're supposed to make it in 2018, that EDA by law will cease to exist, and then Whitestown will immediately create a new economic development area,
Okay.
TIF, specifically TIF for this particular project. But there will be multiple TIFs created in what used to be the county EDA. The MOU, I think, is a very good MOU. It's very similar, if you will, to what we just did with GDI. Now, that was an economic development revenue bond and an economic development agreement, very similar, and it has that additional money, and we've gone back and forth on how much money of this bond would come back to the town for, say, a parks project or buying land for the fire station. I've explained that to the developer a couple of times as to why we're going to start doing that or requiring that for these particular projects. I think the number where we are now is $250,000. That's really up for you and the council to decide ultimately what number you'd like it to be, and the developer can kind of talk to you about that as well. We feel comfortable as staff at the $250,000 number. GDI, if you remember, did a bond, and they put in $300,000 towards the 7-acre park over off of Main Street. So as the reason for that is as we tie up TIF, it's not going to the general fund. We do need something to pass through to help us out. So I'm very comfortable with this MOU. I think everybody worked very well to put it together. It's something that we need. It's a good product, and it's a good area of town. We're going to benefit in 30 years from having this industrial that wraps around the west and the northern side of town and fills in with the retail, commercial, and residential to the tune of a very low tax rate and a very broad tax base. So this is why we do these things. It's very necessary, and it's also an interesting piece of infrastructure that gets you from north to south. As you know, you don't have to use the roundabout if you don't want to. You could come west or east on Westtown Parkway, head north to get up to Indianapolis Road and go up to the new interchange, because the new interchange is going to be right here. It'll be right here at 550. So this will tie into that interchange. We're talking as a town about looking at a design of the Ronald Reagan going east into the new interchange, so this would also be kind of related to that as well. So I'm very comfortable with the terms and the language in the MOU.
Any questions or concerns about just the additional traffic impact that it would have? I know we have the new interchange coming up, but what about 267 and down at Whitestown Parkway?
Whitestown Parkway needs to be a Super 2. Now it's TIFs like this though, as you heard, $27 million in increment. It's projects like this that are going to get that done. GCI is also asking, they're probably going to come in front of you with a very similar MOU request. They're going to ask you for some bonding for infrastructure, but they're going to create the same kind of increment as well. I think we have a short analysis from them. They just weren't ready to get their MOU in front of you. That'll help to develop Whitestown Parkway as it goes west towards what will be the Ronald Reagan. Whitestown has jurisdiction to County Road 425, and at that point it's up to the county. So we're not necessarily as concerned about traffic going west at this point. It's the traffic coming off the interchange, and the roundabout being built is going to be a big help. The interchange being built will be a big help. And Indianapolis Road is already a great piece of infrastructure. If we had to go to Super 2 and Indianapolis Road, we could really do it right now within its existing footprint and not have much of a problem. So we're very comfortable with the infrastructure in and around the area right now.
What's the timing for the new interchange?
2019 lead, I believe, 2020 construction.
By the end of 2020, yeah, that's right.
So with the new roundabout, oh, sorry.
No, it's right, go ahead.
With the new roundabout, would it be able to handle if we had to go to a Super 2 with Whitestown Parkway?
Yes, it's being designed
Yeah.
that way. Yes.
Okay.
Questions, Clinton?
No questions, just that this project being some of the smaller buildings and having a thought process for tenants that are going to be a smaller footprint, giving people that are coming out of a growth phase, a place to come and make Whitestown home. And already the first project you're talking about being something that has more office utilization, clean rooms. That's the kind of thing that, we were looking for in this part of town is, looking at the land use map, looking at the comprehensive plan, this starts to fit right into what we're talking about. So I'm very excited about this project. I think this is the type of things that will help bring Whitestown to the next level.
I thank Dax and the rest of the town for working with Strategic Capital Partners on this. Being around the industry for a while, there's no better names than John, Andy, and Andrew for the industry in general. So excited to talk about this continued partnership for the town. As far as moving forward on the MOU and EDA this evening, personally I haven't had a whole lot of time to be able to review this, so I'd personally like to wait until December so we can have a chance to kind of dive into this a little bit more and still talk a little bit more about the revenue projections for the area, just to make sure we have all of our ducks in the row. But would be interested if anyone in the council shares the same sentiment, or the commission, same sentiment, or be willing to go forward and move forward with it tonight.
I feel more comfortable reading through it a little bit more.
And that's fine, I understand, want to make sure everyone has complete comfortability with what we're doing here before we move forward, so that's fine with me.
Okay, so we will probably just table this for the December meeting. Before, do we need to actually have a vote on the table?
No.
Okay.
Do you want property tax assessed values and projections prior to the December meeting?
Yeah, why don't we get
Present
that
them.
analysis
Just so
prior
we
to
know if you
December
want them
meeting?
before them, if you can share them, if we get them to you, Steve, and you can share them, or if you just want a presentation after the meeting. John, I don't know if
Glad
I want
to.
to speak for you.
Glad to.
We want to wait all on those, but we just started those, so we should have something in a presentable form that we can share, I'm sure, right before that meeting, so you factor those into reading the MOU. That'd be helpful.
That sounds great, thank you.
I'll get that to you ahead of time.
Well, thank you all. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Moving on to item B for unfinished business is to consider a request to fund infrastructure improvements in the Legacy 4 TIF area.
Brian, you want to wait until they... Well, you don't have to, but... You don't have to. I figured you didn't want to sit here and be rude.
We love those.
Sure you do.
I would think that around.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Andrew.
much, have a great night.
See you
Right here,
Wednesday.
we'll get over.
It's the best I can think of. It's either fireworks or someone popping a bunch of tires.
Guy Fawkes night, Guy Fawkes Day. There's some fireworks going off in Run for Guy Fawkes Day.
Really?
Oh,
Something British, I don't
the
know.
5th of November. Remember. It's the 6th of November, but
Didn't he try to overthrow Parliament or something?
yes.
Was it a day late because it's the 6th of
Remember,
November?
Says
Someone
clock.
was shooting off fireworks last night. Couldn't tell if I was gonna get shot or not.
Anyway,
Safety first.
Guy Fawkes Day. And why I know it's Guy Fawkes Day, I don't know.
Is there like a big British contingent?
I
Yes.
have no idea.
Some people just like to celebrate things, Steve,
Yeah, as we've learned.
as we have learned.
And speaking of celebrations, did everyone see the rendering that Dax sent along for the improvements to the Legacy Court too?
Yes.
Hooray!
Thank you for bringing us back around. Greatly appreciated.
Maybe not the commissioning.
So we talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, and talked about the improvements to near the Moontown Brewery project for the parking lot, for the lighting in the area too, in the alleyway, for the additional improvements that need to be done for the area. I think Dax explained it really well in the email, but would you mind kind of talking through it again about, it was initially for about $36,000 or so, and then saw the need to further enhance lighting, parking lot in general for the area?
Yes, so way back when we were doing the MOU in Moontown, you asked a very good question, Steve. Part of that EDA was that the Redevelopment Commission agreed to put the new roof on, not to exceed $125,000, and a parking lot, not to exceed $35,000. We went in, saw the parking lot. We could have easily just slapped on asphalt and painted the lines. It would have looked horrible. It would have needed to have been redone in 2 years, and decided, let's look at a bigger project. So that bigger project included the alleyways. So first is an alleyway to the south. This alleyway to the south, I think that's it. Yes, that's it. So the alleyway to the south of the building, it goes in between two houses, and then, there it is, this is the alleyway to the south. And then the alleyway to the east of Moontown, which is actually going to be a promenade. You can drive it, but it'll really be for pedestrian traffic to head towards the Big Four Trail. It will be drivable, it's being built to be drivable. That total came in along with doing the parking lot correctly, with curbing and landscaping and lighting, came in at $289,000. Council approved it, approved a little bid, and I gave you the breakdown of costs. So between MVH utility and what we are asking the RDC to help fund. Now, the town could fund this out of town general capital outlay. There are some other projects we can fund out of town general capital outlay, and so our question was the redevelopment commission, because this is in a redevelopment, it's in an increment area, the legacy core TIF. Would you be willing to loan money from from the Perry Industrial Bond proceeds to this particular TIF, and this TIF could pay it back over a certain course of time? We think that won't take very long. As the GDI project goes elevated, TIF increment will rapidly come into the legacy core TIF, and that money can be paid back in a short amount of time.
Any issues on loaning money from one TIF to another?
No, and Dax and I, we've talked about this quite a bit. And I assume we're talking about from the Perry TIF.
Yes.
And so really the issue is that what really we want to make sure that the redevelopment commission is doing is approving the use of those TIF funds, because this was not within the scope of the projects that were approved in that TIF. So that's why we need to come back to the redevelopment commission and have them approve using that money. Technically, the expenditure of funds doesn't have to come back to the redevelopment commission. But that's why we want to make sure that this board approves it. That expenditure in general, and if you guys want it paid back, I mean, we'll make sure it gets done that way as well. So that's really why we need RDC approval, is the plan for the TIF, the project that was included on there. This wasn't something that was included on it, so we want to make sure that you guys approve that as well.
And just to clarify again, this isn't anything that Moontown asked for, it was just because that was the best interest of the town for this total revitalization, legacy core, correct? Right.
Follow up on that, the totals down here, the 175, 850 for RDC, is that inclusive or exclusive of the 35,000 that was already approved?
So the ask would be for that 175 minus the 35.
Okay.
I think I put it in your email. Can't remember where I put it in.
I have trouble pulling up email right now.
Let me see if I can.
Would explain the time.
Hmm?
Explain the time difference.
I'll find it.
My computer's living in the future right now. Doesn't like me.
Of course, I'm gonna find
When did the town approve the 289?
it.
that back
I think
in
I
July,
said
maybe?
that. I think I said that in the email as well.
Okay.
If I can get the email up.
Well, what tax is looking for that? I just want to say that I appreciate the board taking the time to discuss this issue, trying to maximize our funds here to make sure that we can reinvest in the legacy core with the stormwater project and hopefully sidewalks coming in the next year or two after the stormwater is completed, the connecting of the Big Four Trail to that sidewalk system, and the work that was done on this parking lot to turn into something that will be a very good piece of infrastructure as we look to revitalize and reinvest in the legacy core. I think it's great work that we can do as a town and as, you know, for the future of the town. So anything this board can do, I think would be greatly appreciated.
1026 tax.
1026.
Yep.
So you have the email.
I have the email.
Thank you, sir. My tablet doesn't want to cooperate tonight.
I'm watching it.
He's actually had this recorded for months. I see what he's doing. It's not
So I'm opening up my emails to the press right now.
Transparency at its finest.
And I'm emailing me back, so.
I think it might be off that thread.
All right. Well,
It was this year.
yeah, it was.
Was it July?
Well, we could just make a stipulation of motion, correct?
Is
Here it
that
is.
email?
Okay. Find it. October 26th, you said?
Correct.
Doesn't exist anymore.
Here you come.
Man, I gotta do this on camera. Yeah, one item on the agenda will be a request to loan money from one allocation area to another to help fund the improvements to the road.
I have it, sir. I'll take it from you. How's that?
He wasn't confident in my reading.
That's right.
You pop anonymous?
Words.
So you get the easy ones.
140,850 after the 35,000 is taken off of that.
144,850.
140,850. 140,850. Probably could just say not to exceed 141, just to make it easy, but.
What is this? Harry and.
The council approved it on, during their 8/24/2017 meeting.
Steve, you're comfortable loading from TIF to a TIF?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's
State Board of Accounts is okay with it?
yes, I mean, the issue is not, and actually, Dax and I have talked about getting an amendment to legislation to allow these types of things. But again, what the main thing that the redevelopment commission we want to approve is the use of the funds of that TIF
Okay.
over here as use of for the parking lot from those TIF funds. So that's the main thing that we want to approve. If you guys are concerned about the payback, what we would do is just include within the motion to be paid back from the GDI TIF, I would expect, because this is within, or the legacy core TIF, but they've all been tied together, correct?
Well, GEI
Tied
property
in.
was put into the legislature.
Yeah.
Include that property.
Well, entertain a motion to approve the, I guess, loan from one TIF to another to support the legacy core TIF area for additional infrastructure improvements.
I will make a motion to, as you said, sorry, there was a lot of, move money from one TIF, and I think we should say what, not to exceed 141. Yep.
So we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
Quick question, that motion includes the payback, is that correct?
To include payback, correct.
Okay.
To include. Any further discussion? Not? Those votes say yes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those not approved, please say no. Motion carries. Believe Molly Whitehead wanted to come here to discuss the Whitestown Technology Park, but prefer to table that for the next meeting. So the next item, item D, would be the discuss the CF1 protocol. And that can either
You
be
know.
Megan or Dax.
You can talk more about it. I was being very subliminal, you know what to say.
I talked to Molly today, it's in their strategic plan. So it's gonna be in the 2018 strategic plan for the EDC to start to help us handle the CF1 process. I know that a lot of county EDCs and LEDOs do this, and that would be very much appreciated. So what I'd suggest is, was that strategic plan gonna be on the November agenda, or do you know? So, we have an EDC meeting this Thursday, I'll bring it up, because May is gonna come and hit us rapidly, and we're gonna have to get our ducks in a row. I'd like something in place at least by March of a system that's put in place of how they come in, how they get presented to you, what companies we ask to come in to speak, especially to the council. That needs to be put in place pretty rapidly. Probably starting, there may be even, if you're gonna do that at the EDC level, there needs to be a committee of municipalities that want that help. Sit down and we can all design a plan for how they come in, how they're reported, you know, how the database is kept, what was the original SB1, how do we track where they are now, and determine if the economy has caused them to go off track, or if just changing company plans has caused them to go off track, or if they gave us poor numbers in an SB1, and that's when you start to think about retracting tax abatements. So that system needs to be in place pretty close to the beginning of the year.
Good. And I think the Boone EDC is a great fit to help manage that process. We'll say there's a county in North India and Marshall County EDC that does a great job as far as sending reminders to all the companies to submit their CF1 forms too. They already have all their SB1 forms submitted. They keep the history of the CF1 forms, and then they really work in partnership with the towns to help make sure the companies are meeting the metrics set forth in the abatements. So
Which county was that?
Marshall County. That's just one of the many that do it, but they do a very good job of it. Anything else? Moving along is to discuss tax abatement application and scoring system.
So Brian, I think I always put these items on the agenda until we figure it out. I don't know if it's something that Molly you could talk to Molly as well. I know that you all are talking about a unified countywide tax abatement application system. Sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. We are different communities. We have different philosophy. We have different need. And so I think we still need to consider having a local scoring system that may be different from everybody else. I don't want to tie us to necessarily a scoring system, but right now it seems very rubber stamped, and Whitestown's getting into a position of, I think we can be more thoughtful. And so I think it's time for us to start to look at these options. And a scoring system could be for, if you score high, maybe that's where you go above the standard deduction, you start to go into the 70, 80, 90, 100% abatement range. But there really is no metric right now. Right now, it's all get the AV here, which is fine. It's like Green Park. We want this AV, we want this assessed value. I'm not saying that we want something that makes it difficult for a company to get abatement, but certainly something that gives them additional skin in the game up and above the SB1 process.
To clarify or to confirm too, the town does have a tax abatement application too. It's about 18 pages long. It's good you want it thorough because these companies are receiving a tax break for their continued investment to hire people in the area. We'll say that's the longest application I've seen. And being a prior consultant for allocation decisions, and that's a very long one, but still, I don't see too much of an issue with it, just knowing that they do receive a benefit on the back end of that too. So the town does have a tax abatement application in place, but it's good to continue to evaluate it and see what other communities are doing too.
Yeah, I'm not saying what we have is broken. Ours is very, you're right, Brian, I'm not sure I've seen, you'd be hard pressed to find something as comprehensive as our application, and there's not just an application, there's an MOU, there's
Yeah.
two different processes there.
And that's just for real, and then you have another one for
We
personal
do,
property. Yeah, so it's-
absolutely. So it's not an easy process. But I just have it on the agenda, continue to, we look at different ways to consider some companies, especially if you've got, a bunch of logistics companies that are at $14 an hour.
Right.
And that's when you really want to start looking at scoring system, not necessarily what Strategic Partners was talking about. That's a different product.
Mm.
That's completely different worlds. Okay.
Seeing nothing else, go ahead and move on to new business. Does anyone have anything to bring forth to you? If not, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, you do that, Jared.
Second.
Have a good night, everyone.